I'll dream until I make it real, and all I see is.
I didn't see it go. Did you? I didn't either. Oh my goodness. That's exactly what it is.
Shall we tell everybody
Explain?
what just happened?
Yes.
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 So welcome to Mentorship Mondays with Michelle and Maren and our friend Eric, who is messing with us. I was just telling Maren a little story about what happened to me the other day. And Eric, of course, in his airness, wanted to make sure that we knew that he was going to start the show off with a little something unexpected just to throw us off. So I was telling Maren the other night I was cooking dinner, and throughout last week I had had some pretty deep conversations, I'll say, with my team, my guides, my collective, my group. And I was going through different facets of reality and talking about quantum physics and a lot of experiences that I've had in the last few months. And it was a very deep conversation, and a little bit, I was saying to Maren, reality shattering, right, Maren? Like when we're going through these phases of understanding and understanding reality, understanding ourselves, our soul journeys, and we think we got it. Like, yes, I got it. This is it. This is it. I know what I'm doing. And then something comes in and is like, wait a minute. That's okay. This is new. How does my brain sort this? Because our brain, we like to experience the human, the linear path, and nothing outside of this experience is linear. It's not how we go through things. And so this conversation kind of threw me into that. All right, I need to check myself. Like, am I real? What's here? What's the ground? You know, one of those. And I was kind of half joking, but I was like, I don't know, Eric, are you real? Like, this is a little mind-bending, some of the things that I was learning. And so I was cooking dinner Thursday night after this conversation and completely put it out of my mind, just went about my business, did what I had to do. And I'm listening to a podcast, and I'm trying to remember. Oh no, it started to pause. That's what it was. So the podcast kept pausing. And so you know what happens once? You're like, oh, well, whatever. Play again.
Yeah.
Continue on. It pauses again. Hit play again. Continue on. It pauses again. I'm like, all right. Okay. I'm like, let's not play with my podcast, and I've got to make it. Hit play. And it happens again. And again. And so by this point, I'm like, what is going on? And I look over, and my iPhone, the app, so like when you delete the apps, it does those little jiggly, jiggling. Okay, I'm hands-free, haven't touched anything. I look over, and all my apps are jiggling. Not only are they jiggling, but they're coming up one by one and going, are you sure you want to delete Chrome? Are you sure you want to delete Netflix? Are you sure you want to? I'm like, hey, like, at least delete the ones that I don't use.
Be helpful.
Yeah. So I watched them getting deleted, and quickly, not just slow.
Wow.
It was happening quickly. And I'm like, whoa. So I'm like trying to hit, like, are you sure you want to delete? I'm like, no. I'm like pressing no. And I'm kind of half laughing because I know it's Eric. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll fix him. So I take my phone and I shut it off. I power it down, and I'm like, all right, now delete that. And I power it back up, and it does it again, and then the Ghost Radar app comes up, and I'm like, yes, Eric. And so, what were you
That's
doing,
crazy.
Eric?
He's like, that's his calling card, like signed by me. You know, like that was me. Wow, that's so purposeful.
I'm like, Eric, what exactly is going on? And he's like, just in case you didn't think that you were real, in case you didn't think I was real, I just letting you know that I am. Just a little reminder. Hello.
Oh my gosh.
So,
That's crazy.
moral of the story, before I tell you what he just did to Maren and I, moral of the story is if you want to question reality, don't ask Eric to show you what's real and what's not, because he likes to take those opportunities to um mess with your reality. That's the basic way to say it. Anyway, he hasn't done something like that to annoy me in a long time. But that was pretty funny. So I'm just telling Aaron this, and he is very good at playing with electronics. And what does he do right away? As soon as we play, he knocks out
Well,
my countdown.
especially I said, don't do it to me, Eric. That's exactly what I said.
He's like, really?
He's like, uh-huh.
Double dog? Triple dog dare?
Yeah,
Really? No?
exactly.
Yeah, so here we were, like, waiting for our countdown. That's why we were sitting here going, huh?
We were both
Oh!
like,
The
we have like
record light just
confused
started.
blank looks on our face.
Yeah,
Like, what's happening right now? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And, and this is kind of going into our topic because we do have an interesting topic about, we were talking about grief last time and just what was happening around the world. And it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting because Eric actually brought up a topic with his mom. And we did a filming last week and we went into what we talked about unexpectedly,
Oh.
but it ended up being like a continuation from our conversation last Monday. But we were just talking about grief and the transition process. And you did get into contact with the young man that had passed away
Mm-hmm.
since
Mm-hmm.
last week. Do you want to share anything that
Mm-hmm.
came forward or anything that any of that
Um,
experience?
a couple things were really unbelievable to me. Not unbelievable, but just
Mm-hmm.
profound to me that
Remarkable, yeah.
happened. Remarkable. Yeah. Um, they had to do with Jesus. And I was telling my husband this. Just like when I first saw him, I can't remember if I told you guys this last time. I don't think I did. But he, so he had a tragic accident
Yeah.
and they called me and they're like, check on him. So I check on him and all I see is, um, Jesus carrying his body and
Yeah.
Jesus is like wearing the crown of thorns and he's carrying his body. And he said, I've suffered as you are suffering now, or something like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that's really powerful. And then I checked on him again like a day or two later, and he was still with Jesus. And this time, Jesus was like in um, robes, like white robes, and he had him again still, like he was sitting on like the edge of like a fountain, and he had him still like on his lap, and he was like putting water on him. And it did kind of remind me of a baptism, but like it also like I knew like the water was like healing water. And so I think that's like kind of what we were talking about where he was in the liminal space. It's like he had
Yeah.
crossed, but he was like not quite in heaven. He was just kind of like in this healing
Yeah.
place with Jesus. And so like I feel like when you're talking about like, okay, he took the airport, he's on the other side, but he's like in this room first and
Yeah.
um, kind of healing there before he moves on. And then, I said, okay, when you're ready, I want you to give me a sign that you're ready to talk and that you've like, cause I didn't want to mess up. I didn't know like how the healing process works. Like if he's distracted by someone trying to talk to him, is he not going to like heal or whatever? So I said, when you're ready, show me a rose and I'll know that you're ready to connect. And so I don't know, a day or two later now after that, um, I was helping my son clean out his closet, and he got this one really thing from China,
Yeah.
and it came with a card, and it was like this plastic card with this plastic, like you open it up, and it's this like origami like rose that's like
Oh,
in the
wow.
card,
Wow.
and I don't know why because it's kind of funky. Like I don't know why we didn't like throw it away on like because it's Christmas where you're getting a rose card, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
that was in with the toy. It was so odd. But anyways, whatever reason, my son kept it. And so I'm cleaning out his closet and I saw this rose. I was like, oh my God, like I think he's ready to talk. I think this is my sign. And so the next day I kind of carved out some time and had a good conversation, and he's says he's living his life and he's just full of like zest again, and so it was really nice to know, like, that we've made it through all those
Yeah.
transition processes. But I thought, just like our listeners said, where they wanted to hear more about the transition process, if you have any stories, or I have a few stories that I could share where we can kind of like break down what's happening, but just kind of talking about that because it's so beautiful. And um, then my husband and I were, um, I don't know, he saw something on Instagram, and this little boy, like he was doing some kind of procedure, and somehow he was like able to see the other side. And it was like, my husband was like, do you think this is real? And I was like, absolutely 100%. I think this is real. The boy just kept saying, like, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful over there. I'm like,
I know which
Jesus,
one
you're
you're
so
talking about.
beautiful. Yeah.
I know
And his dad
exactly which
goes,
one you're talking
Dad,
about.
you're so beautiful. And
Yes.
it's just like, oh my God, there's so many butterflies. I don't remember it being this beautiful. Like, it's so
Yeah.
beautiful. Like, and you're just like, and I'm like, absolutely. It's the care with it. Like, I've never been like a Jesus person. Like when I pray to God. I've never prayed to Jesus. Like there's those people that like only pray to Jesus, like I'm not
Yeah.
one of those
Yeah.
people. I'm not like one of the like, I don't know, like I should be now because I've seen so many things. But um so to like see Jesus, it's not really like, yes, I do have a Christian faith, but it's not like I'm like, oh, Jesus is the one that's there. Jesus is the one that takes you. Like, and that's not me at all. And so um like I don't know, maybe I would even be more of like angels would take you or something, like than Jesus. But like the fact that he was there, and then the fact like that video, I'm like, they're just there, and they have so much respect and love for every individual, and it's not just Jesus. I just feel like it's all your guides, everyone on the other side, and that this transition process is so beautiful. And you're so like, you're in good hands. Like you're taken care. Oh my God, somebody's poking me. You're getting the man. You're getting taken care of. So, um, I'm like, is that Eric or is that, my friend? Is it Jesus? So, anyways, so
I think they're all here. They're all here.
I know. So, anyways, it's just so beautiful.
It is. It is. And, that little boy, I know exactly which video you're talking about. And that little boy, I believe he was on, uh, he had had some procedure and he was on, I can't think of the word,
Oh,
on
like laughing
medicine.
gas?
Yeah, he was on something, and because of one, his age, and two, because whatever veil is there between one world and the other was completely dissolved at that time for various reasons. And one of them was specifically for what he did. It was for that moment that was captured because that was 100% legitimate. And it
Oh,
was
it
for that
mean, yeah.
moment, yeah, a moment being captured. Not only the personal moment of capturing him seeing his father in Jesus, but just as you say that, how many people, not even the words he said, but felt the love from that boy and that connection to the other side, because that's what
Hmm.
came through the strongest. And that's when we know something is real. And that's when we know, even if the words we're dissecting, well, is it really this or is it really that? The one thing we can count on is that feeling inside. I don't know how. don't know exactly, but I can feel it. I know that
Mm-hmm.
this is right, or I know there's truth, because the resonance and feeling of everything, it's all that comes first before the physical. So, like in the beginning, it is energy first, physical
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. Always, always, always. And so, you know, if I were to look back and sum up the last 8 years of sessions and of working through different transitions, and they're all beautiful. I'm trying to think of some that stand out. I mean, like when we spoke about the young man that you connected with that passed away, we talked about last week that you were just explaining, communicating with. I mean, there's nuances and differences in how one transitions depending on what their passing is, right? Because what's
Mm-hmm.
happening is when we're exiting the physical body, there are a few things that play. Even when there's going to be an exit that is sudden, there is a preparation to a degree that is taking place theoretically, because every exit has an agreement. Every exit has some kind of agreement on a level. And so there is some sort of preparation that takes place. Because if the agreement's not there, the transition won't happen. It'll be a near-death experience. It'll be a close call. It'll be I don't know how this person walked away from this, but they did. So when it comes to how the transition is experienced, well, we get into what exactly does it look like. I can only give you what it looks like from my perspective, because obviously I'm here in the physical body, and I
Mm-hmm.
can only give bits and pieces of what has been shared with me and what I've seen in my own inner vision. But what I can tell you is this: there hasn't been one spirit, and I've talked to numerous spirits over the years and with people all around the world, and there hasn't been one that has told me I was alone. Not one. There has been some that have said, I knew that there was support there. It was dark for a moment. And those particular instances were individuals who maybe had some tough stuff going on in their physical life. Maybe they had a lot of fear in their life, and they were never alone. And they knew they were never alone. And I'm thinking of one individual right now, in spirit, who told me that he could hear and feel love. And he explained it to me like hearing the voice of a parent in the back of your mind that said you're safe and you're okay. Sit for a moment, you're loved, you're surrounded in love. That's the closest that I've experienced with a spirit. Now, I have heard spirits tell me, different spirits tell me, particularly my guides, and tell me about that there can be instances where they don't cross, or we talked about it a bit last week about how hearts cross. But what we're talking about today is specifically about the crossing experience, the actual crossing experience, and what does that look like. Maren, I'm sure that you can attest to some of the visuals that you've received about going to the other side, but ways that I've seen it. One of the most common things I see is I see water streams, uh, what looks like riverbanks, multicolored trees.
That's so
I've
interesting that
seen
you say
it.
that because I have a question. So I had this one person, and he was showing me his passing, and he was in a hospital bed. And then it's like up above him, I could see his mother's hand, like, or I saw a hand and I knew it was his mother. And it was like he reached to grab his mom's hand, but then it was like almost like the bed evaporated, and all I saw was like looking down at feet, and they were in sand. And I was like, I think that he passed. And then I interpret, so I'm like, I don't know. So and then I'm like, I think he passed. And he literally was like right on the other side at the beach. Like, does he love the beach? That's why I'm always questioning. I'm like, what's going on? Why am I seeing what I'm seeing? Like, is that what, do you see things like that too?
Um, just as you're saying that, I'm thinking about so there is one woman that talked about her passing and how she could hear her loved ones. She was still in her body and she could hear them. And then she started to see them. And then she opened her eyes and actually walked into a welcome celebration. There's many instances where how you just described where they suddenly start to enter into another space. It's like things melt and they're
Yes, that's
entering
what it was
another
like. It
space.
was so odd. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have seen that. Um,
Okay.
uh, another one that I've seen a couple times with different spirits has been a porch. What looks like like I do see that. I'm going to say the riverbanks are very common, but where I've seen a porch where they are showing me the viewpoint of sitting on a porch and looking out on landscape. And a lot of times with the actual transition, because, I will have sessions where the loved ones will ask specifically, who was there? Who did they meet? And they'll often tell me that there is either one, two, three, or four, but always one that has an initial greeting, one that they're received by. Sometimes it can be parents, so there'll be like two there, or grandparents. So I've seen them come in twos, but I don't often see a group. It's usually I'll see one received by one and then moving into more of a group energy. Um, I have seen a man laying in a hospital bed where a dog has jumped up and started licking his face.
Oh my gosh.
So, your beloved pet that was waiting for him to cross, and sometimes they will just lift right out of their body. So they'll show me being in a space um, I've seen like a home, like somebody laying on the floor, and all of a sudden they're standing looking at their body, and they turn around and just start walking. They'll just show me they just start moving towards the door. There's other times where I've seen, um, like we talked about, like the confusion, like that's not my body, that's not me. Or they'll actually show it as blurry. So when they show where the body would be, it's almost like it's being blurred out on a video. And when I see that, that's always like, I don't recognize that. I don't see that. That's not me. Um, what else have I seen? Um, I don't, do you get this? A lot of white space. A lot of white
Yes.
space. So a lot of times when they're showing me who they connected with, there isn't always a background filled in. So, and this is something I've noticed many times where I'll get this flash and it's always like, I want to say it reminds me of like a movie, like when you see what the idea of what heaven is, where it's just like white and cloudy, but it doesn't look cloudy. It just has
Well, so I remember one of my times I was asking you, I was like helping the people from the Ukraine war crossover, remember?
yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like, hey, there was this, and I was describing all the people to you, and then I was like, and then there was a woman on a yacht. You were like, it sounds like she was in heaven, and she's already crossed. And I was like, huh, I wonder why she thought that. And then like now that I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, of course. It wasn't a yacht. It was that white, that pure white.
yeah, yeah,
That is. It's like pure white that I see. Yeah.
yes, yes. But here's the truth of it too. You know, transition, and this is important to relay, is that the transition experience, what is the most common things, always been full of love. There is always a sense of relief. There is never a um, yes, an awareness that their loved ones are grieving, but there's this trust that is built. So when a loved one comes through and says, I'm good, or they know that their, you know, children or partners or whomever that are still living in the physical bodies, right? Um, they're aware of the grief process and they're aware of how it feels, but they also have awareness of the necessity to it and the very clear awareness that they are not gone.
Hmm.
So, there would be some that would be very surprised by that, maybe depending on what their belief system was before crossing. Some that
Hmm.
have come through very surprised. Um, and when we're channeling and they're responding back what their experience is, oftentimes they're also coming with the purpose to be able to bring forth the duality of maybe the way they perceive things when they were in the body compared to how they see things now. And, so the transition process doesn't make all spirits all knowing because there's still different stages to, like, it's a life. There's still life beyond this life. It's different. It's in different form, but it is still life. And so, there are different reflections from a spirit. So what I wanted to say was transition process, just like being out of this physical body and focused in this light, is not a black and white. It is this way. It's all this way.
Hmm.
It is not. Is it love? Yes. Is it expansive? Yes. Are we alone? No. Do we have realizations and more awareness than we did in this life? 100% yes. And do we have options? Do we still have a presence to us, meaning a me, a feeling of me? Yes. But we also have a very big understanding of more than me at the same time, of the
Yeah.
whole, right?
Well, I think
But
about, oh, okay. I think
no,
about
good.
like okay, when, I was listening to that, um, telepathy tapes and the kids were talking about like how they do it and they feel like they just were made or they came here with less of like a boundary and so they're just more in tune with the collective. And I think about that, I think about like ego, right? Like we have our spirit and then we're given this ego, and the ego gives us our identity and our fear and all and the separateness, right? And we always say that about like handicapped children, like they're just the sweetest, they have no ego, they're all love. So it like makes so much sense that they would have some of that like boundary missing, right?
Yes.
And the collective, and then I kind of just generalize that to passing, that your ego is removed and then you just are kind of part of the collective, but you do still recognize yourself, but there is no boundary to it.
That's right.
Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
Yes. So, um, Eric is just showing me, those popsicles called rockets? They're like
Um,
multicolored. I
oh
have them
yeah,
in Canada here. They're like blue and white
and
and
red.
red, and sometimes they
Yeah.
can have different colors in them. Well, Eric says, um, think of your spirit as being the popsicle stick.
Okay.
And he goes, think of the popsicle itself as being your soul. And he says, so your spirit, so you leave your physical body and you're in your spirit. And he says, and your spirit has many different versions or layers to it. And so depending on where you are in the popsicle is how you will present yourself. So when you're closer to the stick, you're going to be closer to the personality of that lifetime. So he says, when you are, like, the awareness changes as you get more integrated with the soul. But see,
Okay.
he goes, it's important to understand that as we're saying this, we are thinking of it in the linear term. So Eric says, I can come through close to my Ericness, and I can also come through in higher versions of me because of his role and where he has moved as Eric, as we know him,
That
in our
makes
other
sense.
parts of him, right? So,
That makes sense. Because I had a spirit once, and and he was kind of like a dense guy. And I think I like kind of brought that through at first, but then like towards the end of the reading, he was more like spiritual and like loving. And the sitter was like, wow, I'm really shocked that he got, emotional or what, not emotional, but like deep.
yeah,
I'm really shocked
yeah,
that he got deep. And I was kind of like, oh, did I make that up? But that makes sense because it's
yeah,
like he was doing all this periphery to like validate it was him and then kind of going deep
yes.
into the message to like provide the healing.
And see,
Okay.
this is like, to be mentioned, like, we're multi-dimensional channels. Channeling, channeling itself is evolving. Mediumship is evolving as we are evolving. And we are multidimensional channels. We always have been. But more and more it's becoming aware that there are so many different layers and flavors of the spirit of the soul. And that when we're connecting to these different facets, they're vibrations that run through us. They're all different vibrations that maybe have different spouts, right? It's energy. It runs through all these different spouts. So when you have a individual here in life that may have come across a certain way, we also have to remember we could judge a human being and say, well, they weren't that bright or they didn't really go that deep, right?
It's true.
Like really, we could look at
Yeah.
anybody and say, well, this is how I view this person or this is how I saw it. But do we really know why that person comes through that way? Do we really know what their purpose was? Maybe their personality and the things that they did and the way that they came across was for a very big purpose that we can't see, or layered purposes within that family or community. We have no idea, really, on the grand scale, why that is. We will easily judge somebody as saying, well, that person's not successful because I don't see this, or this person isn't very intelligent because I'm not. So we can come together with all of those different things. But when we start to look from the other side and we look at the bigger picture, then we start to see all the different vibrations of why that soul came into this life, why they came
Hmm.
in and did what they did. And we can't ever say, did they have a good life? Did they do their complete? Did they? We can't say that because we don't really know what the full scope of everything that soul did. So when we start to experience the higher version of a spirit, exactly the way that you did, as mediums, and really we're birthing through all of these different layers of a soul, of a spirit. We could have that individual come through in the way that they were known, so that the person they're with, their loved one, recognizes them. To say, yes, that is, that I remember that personality, that behavior. But then to understand that that spirit is part of a soul that is quite evolved. And so as they begin to open up a conversation, they begin to open up who they really are. Because that's all of us. Our personality and who we identify with. Not all souls or not all spirits are here on earth to awaken. We're not all here to claim sovereignty. We all have the ability, but we're not all here in the same layered purposes. And so many are here to be stabilizers, where they hold the energy for there to be those souls that came in to help elevate consciousness. So it's so fascinating that you had that experience, because when you have an experience with a spirit and you feel that, I call it it's like a symphony. It's like it starts to go to a crescendo. So you start out maybe over
Yeah.
here, and then it starts to, you
Yeah.
feel it ramp up, and then you feel it get
Yeah.
deeper and expand, and then it closes up.
Yeah.
And when you feel that happening, you're playing the notes of all of the soul. You're getting the whole symphony of a soul. And some connections, it doesn't go like that, because maybe the loved one that we're sitting with, that's not what's required. Maybe what that loved one needs is, I just want to feel the personality of who I know and love. And I need that
Yeah.
closeness and that connection, because that's what heals my heart. And it's completely true and real, and so is the expanded version of that spirit as well. So that's amazing, because you noticed that difference. You remembered that difference, which is absolutely right. And it's easy for us as channels to go, wait a minute, did I do something wrong, or did I misunderstand what was happening, or was I channeling something else? But that right there is identification of what channeling the multidimensional soul is.
That is really cool. Do you have any experiences with the life review process?
Yes. Yes.
And do you think, does every soul have to do a life review?
No, they don't. Every soul has the ability to have one. Every soul can have one. Every soul is presented with an opportunity, but they are for different purposes, depending on their incarnation and what it is that they're doing here on Earth. Most souls will say, a great majority do. They do as part of the organic process. They don't all have them right away. There have been some that talk about their life review happening in bits and pieces. There are some that have it all at once, almost like screening a movie, like watching like the grand finale of their life, the highlights of their life. There are some that have what they told me is a life review in combination with pre-planning all at once, and they go right back into the body. Or they have
Oh,
awareness of
wow.
going right back into the body. Yes. And the times that I've seen that happen, and again, we have to understand that they're really, like, if anyone's thinking, oh, I want my loved one to wait for me, like, what if they're back in the body and they're not going to be there? That doesn't happen, because remember, again, that's a linear way of thinking things. When a spirit transitions, So when we transition and we leave our physical body and we rejoin our soul, our oversoul source, there's always going to be our personality of who we are. Who you know, your loved one, is there. But remember that we don't directly incarnate in that way. It's like taking a spark of that same piece and putting it right back into a body. So when I say it comes right back in, what I'm meaning, and this is from what they've shared with me, is like taking a piece of an incarnation going right back into the same lifetime focus, same timeline, could even be the same family. So think of it as a grandfather passes away. He has a life review and is also told, you have the option, or would you like to take a spark of yourself and become your granddaughter's child? Okay. So that's like a direct right back into that family, which is part of that pre-plan.
So I see it like, because we always talk about like, Earth is like a video game or whatever, it's not real. It's like that's real and we're just, or like actors on a stage or whatever,
Yes.
And but it's like I think about like my son's video games where like he gets to pick his character, So it's like you have this like off stage where you have like all these different characters and you get to pick which character you're going to be. But all those characters are still off stage or out of the game.
Yes.
But they're alive. They're you can interact with them, correct? Like so you can so you can incarnate or just which technically, if it isn't linear, they're all alive right now anyways, correct? Like,
yes.
It's not,
Every lifetime that all of us have had are currently existing, happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I have had one interaction with a life review where it was like a dream where I was dreaming I saw this like Jeep like going kind of crazy through the woods. And then these two ladies came up to me and there was a boy with them, like a teenage boy, and they were like, "Can he go with you?" And I was like, "Oh God, no! Like I don't want to go in that van, that Jeep. Like that's scary." And I remember they like laughed at me and they were like, "No, you're not going in the Jeep. You're going to talk to him." And I was like, "Okay." And one of the ladies like looked grandma-y and the other one looked like an aunt, but she had like this thinning hair, like she had gone through chemo or something. And everything was dark. It was very dark. And I said, oh, okay, I'll go with him. And I sat at this table with the boy and these bright lights like came down over us. So it was like still dark, but just there was just bright light like illuminating the table, almost like we were like in a dark like billiard or something with like those, lights. And then the table just became like a screen, like a TV screen, and you could see his whole life in the table as we were sitting there. And the two ladies were sitting there, and the boy was sitting there, and me. And I was talking to the boy about his life, and he felt like he really screwed up. He was a football player. Like I could see a football game in the table, and he felt like he really disappointed everyone and screwed up his life because he died because he was driving recklessly with his friends in this Jeep. And then I was like, oh no, like look at how good you did, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like pep talking him. And like that's really all I remember. But then the next day I like did a meditation and the two ladies brought forward the boy again and he had crossed. And so it was almost like he was in that liminal space that you talk about. And he needed this life review to like be assured that he made more good choices than bad choices or whatever it was before he could cross. It's so interesting.
So isn't that very interesting? Because in that moment, think about what was really happening. is your higher soul and your spirit self was helping cross an individual while your physical self slept. And then they came back to you when you were awake, because you do help those cross, and you always have, and you've known when you started consciously walking this path, you knew that you were a steward for helping others cross. And so that was a snippet of you seeing your higher soul. And I can't remember, Maren, if we talked about this on our show before, but so interesting. You talk about the table with the screen.
Yeah.
Do you remember me
Yeah.
telling you about having those same visuals through a dream?
Yeah. I
That
think that
I
we
had
have
seen
talked
all
about
those.
this.
Yeah.
I think we have talked about this on the show before because I do remember you had a very
Yeah.
similar experience, and then I shared
Yeah.
mine. Yeah. That
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just so interesting how like that's so would you call that black space all the liminal space? Because so I think I told you that other dream that I had where my spirits were like, you need to go now. And I knew I was going to my grandmother's funeral and I was confused because I was like, why do I like my both my grandmothers are passed away. I don't know why I'm going to a grandmother's funeral right now. And all I knew, it was like I was traveling and there was this area where everybody was meeting under what looked like it was nighttime, like all black. And it looked like we were meeting under like the construction lights, like when construction workers work at night and they have those big lights that like basically make it look like daylight. It's like that's how I knew where to go because I was like headed towards the light, which is so funny because there's all these everybody's like, go to the light or God's light or they see your light. And like here I am, like, no, like literally it's light. you know, it really looks like bright light.
Yeah.
So that space, and then we like watched just for recap purposes. Then we went to this building, and I feel like that was like either it was like a nursing home or hospital, and it
Yeah.
ended up being my grandmother-in-law. So
Yeah.
someone that I had actually never met in person. Um, my anyways, grandmother-in-law, and she had passed that night, and so we were like waiting outside the building. And then she passed, and then there was like this big reception that almost looked like, after church, where
Yeah.
everybody meets after church. And so I
Yeah.
had that dream. There's a lot more details, but I'll,
Yeah.
save them for another time. But
Yeah.
anyways, and then my husband woke like the next morning, he was like, hey, so and so's mom passed. I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Those
um,
dark spaces are like the liminal spaces are, it's without light. So it's interesting that you would say that you would see bright lights, because without light doesn't mean without presence of light. It's, think about the analogy or the metaphor of what you see, because their consciousness, spaces of consciousness, or we call them dimensional pockets. So they're pockets of, it's not really a location. Everything exists right here. All the dimensions and everything are right here with us. It's overlays. Think of it as overlays. So when we talk about the veil, it's lifting a veil. So it's like seeing through, peering through, feeling through. So in that in-between space, we're gonna view it maybe in a way that we're going to understand the metaphor, the meaning to it, because not all liminal space looks dark. But if there's something that needs to be brought to light within a transition, within the, like, on whatever it is, for, like, if you're viewing it from the perspective of the medium or the one that's being shown the information, you're actually seeing a lot of things from your spirit. So you're seeing that full view, but you don't all see it conscious. You see it while your consciousness is in different states. and as you bring back some of the memories. But when you see a dark space and you see a light, think about how that feels, because it doesn't always feel heavy, right? You can see a dark space
Oh,
and it feel absolutely beautiful, right?
yeah, it just felt like night. It didn't
Yeah,
feel,
yeah,
it just
yeah,
felt like night. And the dark with the billiard table, or like billiard table,
yeah.
like that just felt like I was in a room again without light. I don't know. Yeah, it didn't
Well,
feel like
you were ushering.
dark.
There's a couple messages there, because you were, not only were you helping usher somebody, right? Because your spirit was ushering. You were also you were the light. So you were the point of contact, the light that stood out the loudest, the light that was the strongest, to be able to bring through something that was brought under the cover of night, which was a transition. And it was brought through the cover of night, bringing light to the awareness of something that transpired, which that message for you, I'll just tell you, I don't know who you shared that with, or if it was just your husband you shared it with, but there is this sense of whatever came from you came out to others, whether it came from words or energetically, but there was a certain amount of peace that came, because the soul that crossed, the spirit that crossed, was directly connecting to you, to be able to express that experience and express the truth of what was taking place. And I'm just gonna say, there's something that, just as I'm talking about this, I'm getting a lot of visuals about you having a little more information, or maybe in a meditation or a dream, you might get some information about your role with the crossing, what your spirit does, which I think is a little more than what you might know at this time. And I'm not being told, but there's a lot of expansive energy around it for you.
Oh,
Like, there's a lot more to it.
okay. Okay. Well,
Love to dive
so
into that.
yes, I would love to, because there's definitely more to um, that story that I think, but if
Yeah,
everybody knew, maybe it would make us even have even more questions. So
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah, yeah,
But would you, because like when Jesus was in the white robes with the water and you called that liminal space, it was white, it was bright, it was,
yep, yep.
that was liminal space. But this other like darker space, would you call that like the astral, what do I call it? The astral realm, the astral space, astral.
Yeah. Myself personally, I've not seen an astral space in bright, that same brightness. When I'm tuned into the astral space, it can look very similar to um a darker or maybe grayer version than what
Okay.
we have here. So it doesn't, um when you say astral, what comes to me is the experience of that not all souls are in. It's like, yes, they go through. It's part of that overlay, but it's not necessarily something that is experienced. But the astral is something that we can enter into with consciousness while in our body. I'll
Is the
say it as
astral
harder in
more
our
like
body.
your traveling dreams? Like when I've had traveling
Yes,
dreams, is that the astral realm? Okay.
yes,
But this
yes.
dark night with the bright lights, that's still liminal space because it's part of like
Well,
transitioning.
yes, yes. That's
Okay.
exactly how I take it, because the astral, to me, in my experience and what they've shared with me, is the astral space is, I mean, there are different beings that can come into this space. There are spirits in this space. We can also communicate in this space. We can leave our body, we can astral travel. So we can leave our body with a sense of consciousness, which many people have worked on being able to leave the body and experience in a way where they're bringing back, more of a conscious, not so much of a dream space, lucid dreaming in this space. Our dream time with our consciousness can move in different areas. So we can move beyond the astral space. We don't necessarily go into the afterlife. It's more of a connecting point when we dream. We can still view from our spirit. So when people are having dreams of heaven, that is true. They're dreams of their loved ones. They're not viewing it, but there's a slight difference in our level of consciousness, even when we're asleep, with how we're experiencing. It's really fascinating. There's a lot to it. The best part about it is it's never one thing. That's why when we have these conversations, and it can be very confusing because people say, well, I heard this, and then I heard this, or that's not
Well, and
true.
then we have no reference for it, right? So it's like,
and that's the other thing, and that's why it can be very hard for people that are just coming into it. They're like, well, how do I know if that's true? Eric just said, that's why you get to know yourself. You get to know what feels right so that you can discern. Discernment is your friend through all of this.
That's so, okay, I will leave us with this. I love that Eric says, get to know yourself. I have been struggling, I've been struggling with coming up with questions to talk to my guides to meditate on. I'm drawing blanks. I was literally going to ask ChatGPT, but then it's too generic. So what kind of questions could we ask Eric or our spirit guides, whatever, to get to know ourselves better? What are some good questions to meditate on?
Well, the thing is you're gonna get, depending on how deep the questions get. So let's say the first things that are popping up is what's my purpose here? And the first answer I just got is to love. To love. Okay. So we're gonna get these kind of basic, I shouldn't even say that basic because it's much deeper than that, but the more questions that you ask that are closer to your vulnerability are the ones that are going to give you a little more depth. When you ask questions of your guides that are hey, what's going to happen next week? Or am I going to get this job? It's not that you won't get something. You can. It's not that your guides aren't there to help you with that. What your guides really want to help you do is getting to know yourself. Is getting to know the deeper parts of yourself. And although it is absolutely fun and amazing to dive into our soul and all the parts about our soul and where we come from and what we do, we're still here having a human experience. And so a really beautiful place to start is looking at ourselves and looking at something where we feel maybe a sense of confusion. Maybe it's, what am I not seeing in this relationship? What am I not seeing about myself? It's remembering everything that you have a challenge with in your life, whether it be in a partnership, a friendship, a parentship, or anything in your life. The one thing that will always stay true through your spiritual journey will be, it always comes back to you. So no matter how much you go on the outside and say, but they do this, and they do this, and it upsets me when this happens, it doesn't mean that's wrong, having that viewpoint. What it means is where you're going to get the most growth, where you're going to get the most information, is when you can say, and this takes sometimes going into that, what is this something I'm avoiding? And we all know. If we all really want to look at it, that's going into yourself. If there's something in you that you feel like, I don't want to hear this answer, Well, it doesn't mean you need to jump right into it if you're not ready to talk about it. But can you circle in that area and say, maybe, why do I feel sad when my partner doesn't talk? Why do I feel, you know, go into bringing all your questions back to yourself and allow, and I would recommend, if you're asking these questions, to write, to write them. Ask the question and allow yourself to just write. And keep in mind that depending on where you are with communicating with your guide, you may write in a way that is writing from the ego. And that's okay, because it's layers. So what happens is, when you start to write, and you write in these layers from the ego, which might be expressing frustration and anger and disappointment and sadness and grief, eventually those start to lift. That's why writing is so cathartic. Those will start to lift if you're dedicated to the intention that you start with, which is getting to the core of answering the question to understand myself better. That's how you do it. And it's the dedication to doing that that creates clarity, because that's what clears distortion. That's how you have better discernment.
It's also about like consciousness, right? You're like bringing these issues to your consciousness. So, and that's creates awareness, and yeah, and then
one of
that can help you release it.
the RAS, the reticular activating system of new neurons. And when we are asking these questions, we're giving our nervous system recess, because it's the nervous system that actually contributes to distortion. Because we'll take actions, dance around truth, avoid, when we're trying to keep ourselves safe. And that's not a blame thing or a negative thing, because we've all done that. What that is that being able to understand ourselves better, and to do this in little bits by little bits by little bits, because then our nervous system starts to learn, wait a minute, we're safe. If we can do these things, we're safe. And more, that whole system retrains. The neurons all retrain, and that's how you integrate more of your higher self. That's the key. And that's why a lot of people, and again, no blame, but why that cycle, why looping takes place, because it's hard to face ourselves. It's not easy. It's not pretty. And we're not here to be perfect. It's a very human thing to keep ourselves safe. But we no longer live in the jungle. We no longer have seen threats in that way. But there are other things that have threatened us. So other things we experience, traumas and all of those things throughout our lifetime since childhood, along with society and things that are taking place outside of us. That's why the inside, getting to know ourselves, is so important right now. Because when you don't do that, when you stay on the outside ring instead of working into the core, what you're doing is you're continuously looping in stories and situations that might very well be happening, but your nervous system is reacting and responding all the time, which does what? It makes us sick. And I know this because it's my life. And that's why I do what I do. Because I had to go through that to be able to get to a point where I feel calm in that function without other things. Yeah. So that's a really good question that you asked. It is a really good one, because that means so much to each one of us on our journey, and it's a really good time to do it, because our guides are supporting us so much. And you'll be surprised at what they show us when you ask these questions. It's all in love.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for all of your very, very valuable insight and information. I really appreciate it. This was kind of a fun topic. I feel like I learned a lot, and hopefully it provides some comfort to people who are struggling with grief right now. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, this is good. And keep the topics coming, guys, because there's so many different directions that we can go. And Maren and I are very organic with how things come up. We allow spirit and what comes up in the collective to bring us forward to whatever we're going to talk about. So, well, thanks, Maren. And I guess we
Thank
will
you,
see
Michelle.
each other again. And to everybody, this is your reminder today to stay healthy, stay well, stay grounded and in your body, and enjoying every single moment of this human experience that you possibly can, no matter what is going on in your life at all. Because you are loved, you are guided, you are supported, and you are never alone.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.